The Sony FX30 is one of the best video cameras for both serious shooters and beginners, but it's a few years old, and other brands have made very competitive cameras, and even Sony has made cheaper versions of this camera. But thankfully, I've had a chance to use all of these cameras and compare them to the FX30. So is the FX30 still worth it compared to the competition? Also, I'll leave links down below to the best pricing on the FX30 and the competing cameras. When it comes to the specs and features, the FX30 is very impressive, but only for specific kinds of shooters. The FX30 has a 26 megapixel APS-C or Super 35 sensor, while the bigger full-frame sensors have become quite popular, and there are cameras that cost about the same or slightly less than the FX30 that do have the larger full-frame sensor. Most people are going to be just fine with APS-C and Super 35. But if you ever want full frame, you can simply add a speed booster for a few $100s or rent one for about $25 a day. And with the speed booster, you get a full frame look, and you even get an additional stop of light on all of your lenses. And you'll see as we go on, the FX30 actually has many ways of upgrading it because it's a camera that can actually grow with you. And one thing about the FX30 sensor that usually goes unnoticed is the low light performance, which is really helpful for indie filmmakers, content creators, or just small budget shooters. It has a dual native ISO in S-Log3 of 800 and 2500 ISO, and when shooting in standard video mode, you can easily push this camera as high as 6400 ISO, and you'll get very clean results, and they are much cleaner than the competition. But here's why low light performance really matters. Not only does it make it easier when you're shooting in available light for vlogging or documentaries, but you can now also use smaller lights that have a lower output and simply stretch the output of the light further by using a higher base ISO, meaning all of your lights will appear brighter on camera. And these lights are not only smaller and cheaper, but also much quicker to set up, saving you both time and money. And this is something both professionals and beginners will appreciate. Now, most beginners are mainly using photo lenses and shooting handheld. Thankfully, the FX30 has very good autofocus even when you're using third-party lenses. And this is something the Sony brand as a whole is known for. But one thing you should know is that Sony has made cheaper versions of the FX30 that actually have better autofocus for a whole lot less money. I will talk about these cameras later on, but for most people that are beginners, not shooting anything super complicated, the FX30 autofocus will be just fine. The FX30 also has great 5-axis in-body stabilization for smooth handheld footage, and the FX30's handheld stabilization is as good as any of the other competing cameras, but you can also take the FX30 footage, or really footage from any Sony camera, put it into the Sony Catalyst browse software, and actually use that software to stabilize your footage because the camera actually records gyro or movement data. So when it comes to stabilization, you have a lot of options in the Sony ecosystem. Now, most of you guys probably care about the resolution and frame rates, and fair enough, because your image really matters, especially in a cinema camera. But I have some bad news, so let me just rip the band-aid right off. When it comes to photos, the FX30 can only do single photos in JPEG or RAW, and there is no physical shutter. So it can only take a single photo, and it also does not work with flash. The FX30 is not a good photo camera, and there's much better options else out there, but I will talk about those hybrid cameras later on in the video. And if you're mainly a video shooter, the FX30's lack of photo capabilities probably doesn't matter because this camera is so impressive when it comes to video. The FX30 lets you shoot 4K at 24 and 30 frames per second and 4K up to 60 frames per second with a teeny tiny 10% crop that you will not notice. On top of that, all of the 4K video is also downsampled from 6K, making your 4K video effectively have the resolution and clarity of 6K without the larger file sizes or needing a beefy computer to edit 6K video. So you get all of the benefits of 6K, but without any of the downsides. And the FX30 recently got a software update that filmmakers will really appreciate. The FX30 can now record true DCI 4K at true 24 frames per second, which is meant for things that are playing in an actual movie theater. I don't know if we have a lot of indie filmmakers in the audience, but I think it's a really cool feature to just have. And the FX30 now also has anamorphic D-squeeze in camera at 1.3x and 2x, with 1.5x coming later this year, or it's already out depending on when you're watching it. But Sony is going to continue to update the FX30. They actually have a 6-month software road plan that you can look up on their website, and it's nice to see Sony's actually listening to their customers and giving them what they want even years after they've put out the camera. Now, if you really like to shoot slow motion, the FX30 can also do 4K at 120 frames per second, sadly with a really hefty 1.6 times crop, which zooms way into your image and honestly has a lot of noise as well. But if you're shooting in bright outdoor environments, that noise actually is not very prominent. It's not the ideal way to shoot 120 frames per second, but it's a nice feature to have if you ever need it for small detail shots. But the FX30 can shoot full HD up to 240 frames per second without any sort of cropping or noise issues. So if you don't care about having 4K and you simply want the footage, the FX30 does deliver. But filmmaking and video creation is more than just shooting the footage, you also have to edit it and color grade. And the FX30 has a few features that makes the post-production side of the workflow so much easier. The FX30 has S-Log3 in 10-bit color, and it's available in every single frame rate and resolution, so you can always be shooting in the highest dynamic range mode with the best color flexibility. And it essentially gives you the same color grading flexibility as the more expensive high-end Sony cameras. I've actually used the FX30 as a B cam to an FX3 on a music video I shot last year, and we had absolutely zero issue matching this footage. Now, when it comes to color grading, there is one very specific feature that most people actually don't know to look for in their video camera, and that is video codecs. The quality of your video codec determines how well your footage holds up to the heavy color grading, because even if it's 10-bit but with a bad video codec, you're going to get a lot of noise and pixelation and the color is going to fall apart. The FX30 actually has two video codecs that I really like. XAVC 4K and HD, which is a small video codec for small simple projects like YouTube, vlogs, something where you don't need to take up a lot of space and it's a very quick turnaround project. But it also has XAVC-S, which is a high bitrate codec made for professional workflows, which is also present in the higher end cameras that has a bitrate anywhere between 200 to 600 megabits per second, and this codec is what we used for on the music video last year. And the reason this matters is that a lot of cameras will have some super amazing video codec, but they won't have a small codec for simple projects, and it basically makes those cameras only for professionals. But something like the FX30 or most Sony cameras can be both for beginners and professionals. But when it comes to the newest generation of cinema cameras or video cameras that compete with the FX30, most of them can now do some sort of 12-bit RAW internal codec, and actually even the iPhone 17 has ProRes RAW. But if you want to get RAW video on the FX30, you actually need an external recorder like the Ninja 5 or the Blackmagic Video Assist, and this can cost you anywhere between $550 to almost $1,000. And you have to ask yourself, why would you pay an extra $1,000 on top of the FX30 cost when you can get a camera that's a little bit more that does all of this internally? For me personally, it really comes down to the Sony ecosystem and everything that goes around this camera, because there's a lot that goes into the design and ecosystem of the Sony cameras that you probably don't know about, but it makes your life a whole lot easier. For one, the FX30 actually has a full-size HDMI port, where a lot of cameras in the same price range only have a micro HDMI port. I'm looking at you, Canon R6 Mark II, Nikon ZR. Let's all just go to full-size HDMI, guys, please. And the FX30 also has dual SD card slots that can both take SD and CF Express. That is going to make your life a lot easier when you're offloading footage, but also being able to back up your files as you're shooting. And the FX30 also has built-in 1/4-20 screw holes, so if you wanted to run this camera without a cage and still attach accessories, you will be able to. And the FX30 can also be paired with an XLR top handle that's going to allow you to use XLR microphones for the best audio. And most competing brands don't actually make an XLR top handle, with the exception of Canon, but the cheapest camera that has an XLR top handle from Canon is about $5,000. And the FX30 also has built-in cooling, where other cameras like the Nikon ZR, R6 Mark II, R8 don't have built-in cooling. But it doesn't stop there. When it comes to the design, fun layout, the Big 6 menu, and the constant updates in the FX30, I always feel like the FX30 is a camera that's growing with me rather than the camera I'm going to look down at in like a year and a half and be like, it's updated, it doesn't really have the best features. But the best thing about the FX30 and really the entire Sony ecosystem is the Creator app and the Monitor and Control app. The Creator app is going to easily allow you to send all of your files from your camera to your phone and even do small updates to your camera. But the Monitor Control app is actually going to allow you to completely control your camera from your iPhone or iPad wirelessly. So aperture, shutter speed, ISO, any of the major menu settings can all be done through your iPad. So is the FX30 still worth it? Kind of, but not for everybody. Technically, there are cameras out there that have better specs than the FX30, but I don't think they have designed in an ecosystem that competes with the FX30. And if you're someone that wants a proper workhorse, a camera that is specifically designed to be a work tool. This is not a funsies camera, this is a work camera. The FX30 is without a doubt the best bang for your buck. But if you're someone that's just focused on getting the best image, maybe you want it for fun, maybe you're a young cinematographer that doesn't care about the design, you just want a camera that's going to give you the best image and you'll just figure out the design stuff because maybe you're not even working on set, I wouldn't get the FX30. I would probably pick up the Nikon ZR. It's an amazing camera with a full frame sensor with red color science, internal red raw, which is kind of a softer, lower end version of red raw, but it's internal raw nonetheless. And the Lumix cameras even have open gate, internal RAW, and they have a whole bunch of features that I think filmmakers will appreciate. If you're someone that wants to do photos and you want to do photos more than one frame at a time and you don't care about cinema design, I would actually get the cheaper Sony a6700, which is also a much better, like everyday funsy camera. The FX30 is not a camera I recommend to everybody. If you're someone that's mainly getting it for video, you want to be a professional cinematographer, you want to be a working professional, the FX30 is the best camera to start with. However, if you want to get the best pricing on the FX30 or the other cameras we talked about, I'll leave links down below. Check them out, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.